Hi and welcome. My name is Gianna Dalla-Vecchia and you're listening to RTM FM. Today in the studio with me is Peta Tait, who is a professor and also program coordinator of La Trobe University's fabulous drama and theatre program. Her major research methods revolve around the ideas of performing, whether in the theatre or the circus, as well as looking at emotions, social meaning, and theories surrounding performances, just to name a few. But today, Professor Tait is here to speak about her research and methods surrounding one of her more recent books, Circus Bodies, Cultural Identity in Aerial Performance. Welcome, Peta Tait. It is great to have you in the studio.
Thank you for having me here.
Not a problem, not a problem. Now, I have to say, is that okay if I call you Peter instead of Professor Tait?
Yeah.
It's awesome. Cool. Well, let's get the show underway. Well, firstly, Peter, I'd like to ask, why did you choose to research circus bodies, focusing on the identities found in aerial performance?
I was fascinated by trapeze artists and I went looking for the history and then discovered there wasn't one. There were parts of the history in different books and articles. So I set out to put the whole history together in one book.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So obviously it's something that you've really enjoyed viewing, I'd say as well.
It is something that I really found Australian artists are very good at. We're very well known for our circus and physical theatres, so it was quite a logical step to go from our very physical and visual theatre to actual circus.
Fantastic. Yeah. Now, during your research, when, if any, did you stumble on something that was challenging, or how did you overcome this particular obstacle?
The big challenge with circus is that it's an ephemeral art form. So to try and even reconstruct what a performance was like is quite difficult. So I had to go back through every print archive historically to piece together what the actual performances were like. So I'd compare, say, several comments that were made by contemporary viewers. And sometimes I could only just hint at what was performed, and other times I got a good, strong sense of what the act was that people saw.
Now, going on from there, just a general question, how long did it take then? How long did the research methods take? Because it seems like you'd have to go back and look at all these historical documents on various performances. That must have been quite time-consuming.
It's work that I'd done on and off for 10 years.
10 years, fantastic.
Yeah, I'd done other work as well, but
still it required
it was a long. Some of it took a long time. Yeah.
Wow. You go into great detail to explain aerialist Luisita Lea's rise and fall in the industry. How did you go about finding information on her, and was it well publicised, especially because I noted this in the book that she was quite apparent leading up and also during World War II?
She was a fascinating example of a whole lot of things, and I did struggle trying to find material, but I found some original source material in America in an archive that's in a special aerial collection. So that was of great assistance, and that helped me piece together her personal life. And I wasn't really writing a biography, but I was trying to capture a sense of how an aerialist might be affected by major events like World War II.
Yeah.
So she's German.
Yes.
She's a young performer, and she made the decision to go back to Europe towards the beginning of World War II. Well, she was never able to work as an aerialist again. So the interesting cultural history there is that aerialists need good nutrition.
Of course.
And she, even when she wanted to go back and work as an aerialist, she never got the body conditioning again.
Because I remember you saying actually in the book that she was quite malnourished.
During the Second World War and afterwards, yeah. And
I also remember reading that her family's property was also bombed in World War II. It's just shocking, and which pretty much goes on to the question that I wanted to ask was, using Luisita Lea's as an example, obviously she was affected by the wider social and historical context which she surrounded herself in. Do you believe that aerialist performances in circus today are still profoundly affected by their cultural surroundings?
I do, but they are quite portable. So they are international performers, and she was a lead act at Ringling Brothers in the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey in the 1930s, which remains the biggest circus. So even though she was German, she was hired into America, and aerialists today are still very portable. But of course, you've got to have a distinctive act. Mm-hmm. And for example, she had a distinctive style or act. So to be an international aerialist, you've got to be very good, because these days you're often competing with very accomplished Russian-trained or Chinese-trained performers.
During the introduction of your book, you talk about how you are unwilling to talk about the backstage drama of aerial performance. Why did you feel the need to admit such information, and when it seems that it would be a vital part of the craft's history?
It's in a part because most people write about life in the circus and they forget to write about the circus itself or the performance. Mm-hmm. So you go and you read a circus history and you really find it hard to say, oh yes, well this is life in the circus, but what was the act? What was it that people saw? Mm-hmm. Because people don't actually go backstage and see the life in the circus. They come and they see the circus as a performance. So my intention was to write about the actual performance
itself, which is interesting, especially when it's not really spoken of, which is great that you've actually incorporated that into a novel. You seem to reference elements of historical art and cinema, including pieces by Tom Gunning, who is a well-known cinema writer. So were these fields part of your own personal interest, and how did this shape your understanding and research of the topic?
When I actually looked at aerial history, it's bound up with the history of cinema, because aerialists often did the stunt work in the early days of cinema. So actually, I'm also interested in how cinema scholars have written about action and motion, because my larger interest is in this notion that the aerialist is depicting action, and of course action equates with cinema. So I went to cinema looking for ways of interpreting this and explaining it. So that's how it is. And of course, some circus films are legendary films and were actually winners of Academy Awards and so forth. Yeah.
So it's definitely worth noting. And
yes, so cinema's a big element in the whole
of aerialist
history. Yeah.
Fantastic. In the later stages of the book, you talk about contemporary circus performance. For instance, the current Circus du Soleil. Did you attend any of these performances as a way to gain research for your text?
I always go to them.
I would have thought so, but I just wanted to confirm.
I've been going to Cirque du Soleil shows for a long time. Mm-hmm. I saw them in 1993 when President Bill Clinton saw them and took Chelsea, who was 12, to see the circus. So I was there that evening, and I've been to Las Vegas 3 times. So I've seen they have permanent shows in Las Vegas, and I've seen a number of those shows, some of which are unique and quite extraordinary.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the book, you spend a lot of time talking about the gender roles within aerial performance. Did you find that your own views started to permeate your writing?
Yes, probably. Someone might say that, but I think most people would agree that the aerialist has a very, in our cultural language, a very ethereal effect, which equates with a notion of femininity. And what happened, of course, was that even though there were large numbers of male aerialists, for a long time in circus, the expectation was that the trapeze artist would be female, unless it was a flying act where you'd then have a male catcher and often a male flyer. Yeah. So there were quite gender-defined roles, and female aerialists talk about having to break the barrier to, for example, be a serious flyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, And finally, I need to ask this question because I thought after reading the book, you've spoken a lot about the historical background of aerialists and things like that. I thought I need to ask, can you give us some insight of your point of view on contemporary aerial performance, and do you believe it is a dying art form, and basically where can you see it heading in the future?
I think it's a expanding art form because I think you can go and see aerialists in everywhere from dance party venues to quite serious opera performances. Sometimes in high art you'll see an aerialist. So, but I think what's happened is that we've got to the point where we're training aerialists differently. So it's now a tertiary. You can study aerial arts at tertiary level, and there's good and bad things with that. So the level of skill that an aerialist who was in a traditional family developed was more focused and more concentrated. So in some ways the aerialist today has to be a much better theatrical performer.
Yes.
So the emphasis now is on the theatre of the performance, on the character in the act, on the mood of the act.
Yeah. I'd actually agree with you because especially now, theatre is so popular with mainstream, in the mainstream media also, like in Melbourne with all the shows that are on continuously, and even in movies now that have been released, they've also got very much a theatre kind of theatrical feeling to them, whether or not they're specifically that genre or not. So I can definitely see that there's probably more opportunities for aerialists as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, right. I have to thank you very much, Peter, for coming in today. It was fantastic to talk to you about your book. As I said, it was a great read, a fantastic read, and I wish you all the best in all your research in times to come. And thank you for giving us of your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Not a problem.
To talk about my favourite subject.
I'm sure it is. Well, that was Peta Tait, Professor Peta Tait, actually, from the Drum and Theatre program at Trobe University. This is Gianna Dalla-Vecchia for RTM FM.